what is speculative fabulation?
Uh, so this term I love. It's actually drawn from a thinker that I very much respect. Her name is Donna Haraway. So she comes from a school of UC Santa Cruz feminist thinkers. Her most famous work is probably Cyborg Manifesto, and a lot of her work is really in forcing us and challenging us to think. So she actually puts into mind, or she puts a lot of provocations out through bricolage. So she puts a lot of unrelated things, concepts, things together. And that's why Cyborg Manifesto is, where she describes the cyborg as actually quite an interesting thing. It's part human, part machine. And she actually utilizes that as a metaphor for the world that we're in. Now, Speculative Fabulation is a later publication, and it's really about this new mode of thinking and worlding. So one of my favorite quotes is she says, "It matters what thoughts we use to think other thoughts with, what knots we use to knot other knots with." So it's really about how we're actually compositioning of our world, how we're actually putting things together in our mind. And, because we're so used to certain things, we take them for granted, we actually stop sort of pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. So she uses this word fabulation. And if you were to go and listen to some of Donna Haraway's interviews, she says that she's quite specific in using fabulation, and she prefers the French fabulation, because it's really about the fabulous. It's about potential fables. It's about pushing things. It's about pastiche. It's about bringing things that are not currently related and entangling them in new ways. So for me, speculative fabulation from a futurist perspective is particularly useful. And I think I'd love to hear from Chris later on. It's not so different than speculative fiction in that it really is pushing the boundaries. But speculative fabulation, I think, is a bit more accessible, because I think fiction, insofar, has been seen as the realm of writers, where they have to build this, fabulous worlds that go along with it. To her, speculative fabulation is something that we should engage in for the everyman. And she actually challenges us on a day to day level to think differently. So, for example, she says that the world at the moment, to go back to your provocation earlier, Rom, about climate change, is actually overly human centered. She said, what if we actually thought about a more human and coupled with animal centered world? What if we thought about pigeons, for example? We dismiss them as flying rats, for example, right? But pigeons are actually a species that has really learned to exist in a human world. And what if we actually thought about building an urban environment with the pigeon in mind? What would that look like? So she's really challenging us to push the contextual boundaries of how we're compositioning of the world.